New eggs at Harrenhal? They just threw some literal Easter eggs at us. And I think I know what Lady of the Water Alice Rivers is planning. I'm Erik Voss of the new Rockstars channel, and this is a breakdown of House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 6. On a series known for taking a son for a son, now we're taking a hand for a hand. Let's go back through this episode with a scene-by-scene analysis and explanation of everything that's going on, details you missed, and as always, for any spoilers for future plot events from the books, we will save that for the spoiler dungeon at the end of the video. The shirt I'm wearing is our cool House of the Dragon crest design that's available exclusively at our merch store, nerdriot.shop, with a lot of great designs that all make great gift options, and it's the best way to support what we're doing here. All right, the opening Tapestry animation has been updated again. We get a wider shot of Rhaenyra triumphant, where we can see Torrhen Manderly and Lady Sabitha Frey to the left of Mysaria, and to the right of Corlys, while Alicent and Helaena are still erased, you can see the hems of their dresses. And then back to this mystery part of the tapestry, I now think it's based on the context of the attacks on the gold cloaks. And I think we're seeing two of Ormond's operatives tearing apart a gold cloak. This episode, we see blood seeping out from beneath it. And then after that, we see two more of these men, this hidden empire of anti-Rhaenyra operatives with heterochromia, tearing another gold cloak apart. And on this, the whole tapestry tears asunder, and the camera goes through the red-tinted entrails formed by the threads and then back out. We open episode 6 with the light of the seven that Criston was praying for at the end of episode 5. 7 beams of morning sunlight shining through the trees. Remember, Gwayne Hightower abandoned Criston, and now it seems his second in command is this unnamed green soldier played by Richard Flood. He reports finding a Tully camp, but
something strange has happened there.
Yeah, strange as in the stranger who's about to welcome all of you. We see what appear to be corpses of rivermen, Tullys, and Mallisters, but the flies buzzing around them were clearly brought on by the dead livestock and the real corpses that they dressed in their own armor to be laid among them. But then the rivermen spring to life and attack. While most of Criston's meager hosts get killed, Criston manages to survive with some impressive swinging of the Morning Star, or flail as George R. R. Martin described it in the text. A full circle callback to Criston Cole's first ever battle on this series in the pilot episode when Criston unhorsed Daemon in the joust of the tourney. Daemon demanded to continue the fight and drew Dark Sister, and Criston goes for his favorite weapon of the Morning Star, which he uses to catch and wrench Dark Sister out of Daemon's hands and strike and dent Daemon's fancy Balerion the Black Dread helmet, forcing Daemon to yield. Most of the action Fabian Frankel does here is awesome defensive catching of other swords on the chain of the flail. This opening scene merges two successive events that happen in Fire and Blood. First at the village commons at Crossed Elms, where Criston's host rides past what they think are rotting corpses that then just spring up and kill a dozen of them, which was really a ploy by Myrish former mummer turned sellsword named Black Trumbo. But then that attack further reduces Sir Criston's numbers into a battle that comes after the Butcher's Ball, when Criston runs into the overwhelming black forces atop a Stoney Ridge, a massacre, a butchery that Criston does not survive. Here on the show, it all happens together and frames Sir Criston's survival from the trap as kind of a false victory. It's also a little weird to reassign it from a sneak attack by a mummer sellsword to these rivermen who basically pointlessly sacrifice themselves when the full host of the Tullys and Winterwolves just show up afterward and decimate the Greens anyway. But I think the writers just wanted to get Sir Criston's Season 3 death march over and done with. But here Criston goes from his longsword to his dagger to finish off the rest of these sacrificial rivermen and cheers the words of House Hightower.
We like the way! We like the way!
Criston calls out to Oscar Tully and Roderick Dustin to spare the rest of his men if he engages them in one-on-two combat. Roddy the Ruin laughs, and Oscar says this:
I made a promise to the dead, Cole. I told them I'd build a sept out of traitors' bones. I don't have near enough bones yet.
This is a direct quote from Fire and Blood, but it was spoken by Sir Garibald Grey, who is there along with Pate of Longleaf and Roddy the Ruin. Oscar Tully on this HBO show is really a merging of Elmo Tully and Kermit Tully, and he ends up doing a lot more with his river host than anyone like this does in the text. But Criston says that many of them will die, to which Roddy, just as he says in the text, says this:
Well, better wait to die than bleeding hand!
Now Criston pulls out from his sleeve Alicent's handkerchief with the embroidered A. Alicent gave him this in Season 2, Episode 7 as he rode out of King's Landing with Gwayne, and he wraps this kerchief around the grip of his longsword, preparing to go down as if he was holding Alicent's hand. In the text, Sir Criston offers to fight them, 3 of them, against his 1, but here he makes the offer against these 2, but before that can even happen, 3 arrows strike him. Now, in the text, it's actually Red Rob Rivers and 2 of his archers, arrowing him in the belly, neck, and breast. Right as Pate of Longleaf says, I'll have no songs about how brave you died, Kingmaker. There's tens of thousands dead on your account. Basically saying that to a corpse. But here it's Black Aly who flings the arrows. In Fire and Blood, Black Aly is the one whose arrow ends the Battle of Burning Mill. It would have been nice if the HBO series gave Black Aly any lines before this, or gave us a chance to get to know the character before she kills off one of the more significant characters on the show. But again, I do think the writers just wanted to give Sir Criston a very unceremonious end in order to cynically show how his servitude to Alicent and the Greens ended up in zero glory, which they really underline by having the fatal arrow, not in the neck like it is in the text, but in his pretty cheek. As this butcher's ball goes down, we see Alicent's A embroidery flapping in the breeze on the edge of her kerchief, the most poetry Sir Criston will ever get out of his death. R.I.P. King, your storyline sucked this season. Alicent and Helaena are found in a sealed off tunnel. Now I believe this is actually the same tunnel Rhaenyra used to sneak out of as a teenager to meet Daemon in the Street of Silk. Rhaenyra, knowing it was sealed off, was probably why she was okay keeping Alicent and Helaena in this room. Daemon says that Sir Luther Largent plus 14 of his men died in that Last Supper massacre, a total of 25 gold cloaks slain. Orwell reports that the river host is still a fortnight's march from Tumbleton, so no Battle of Tumbleton this week, hopefully coming in episode 7 next week. Sabbatha Frey and Torrhen Manderley crank up the sarcasm, mocking Daemon's dragon Caraxes for any kind of precise attack on Tumbleton.
Flame it spews forth can discern with pure magic who is blameless and who is deserving.
Daemon cuts him off, but he does prove Torrhen's mockery accurate. The rage of a dragon is not truly precise with its aim. Daemon counters that Aegon the Conqueror burned thousands of men in the Field of Fire. We've been seeing this in the opening tapestry of every episode, showing King Mern IX of House Gardener burning on the Field of Fire from all 3 of the invading dragons of Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters. Rhaenyra says she'll send assassins to Tumbleton, but Daemon cannot be among them.
The most effective assassin has a plain face.
Yeah, Daemon will actually use this later when he goes in disguise as a gold cloak to catch his target. Rhaenyra greets a delegation from House Baratheon, absent of Lord Boros Baratheon, whom we only ever saw in the season 1 finale. Boros has blown off Rhaenyra with the same excuse that he blew off Aemond with. I can't come, I gotta march my guys south to the Red Mountains to fight the Vulture King from Dorne. Rhaenyra reminds this Baratheon that Boros was supposed to protect her son Luke when Luke was under his roof, rather than, allowing his crazy one-eyed nephew to kill him. And as a traitor to Rhaenyra's call, now she could hang this man instead. Rhaenyra clocks him up and down and says,
"Give me your belt."
Yeah, at first you could read this as, is this kind of like in season 1 when Rhaenyra was brought to Storm's End to find a potential suitor? No, the clothes they take off from these Baratheons will be given to the dirty assassins later who nearly killed Darren and Ormond and Tumbleton. Hugh flies Vermithor to relieve Ulf and Silverwing from their watch over Tumbleton. The silver and bronze dragons call to each other affectionately and nuzzle. These were the dragons bonded to King Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne, one of the rare, long-lasting, loving marriages of this dynasty. And I think this episode wanted us to remind us of that period of history for a big reveal that comes later. Ulf misses the simpler market days of King's Landing with traders shouting and hot pies, and complains about not being able to go out for ale.
What's the point in having a dragon if no one's around to see it?
Ulf means this more as a whine, but he does speak to the central lesson from Viserys to Rhaenyra in the pilot episode, how dragons are a superficial power, a shadow, a trick, using the mere sight of them to make enemies think you have real magic and real control. Rhaenyra insists on confining Alicent and Helaena to their chambers with no more walks in the Godswood.
She is fragile. You cannot confine her.
I didn't.
This scene goes past this little moment as Rhaenyra insists that Helaena can't be seen because then her whole court will insist something worse be done to her. But I like that Rhaenyra says, I didn't, when it comes to confining Helaena, because as Helaena brings up later, Alicent could have let her daughter Helaena marry another Lord of the Realm and leave King's Landing, but Alicent confined her in the Red Keep. Mysaria points out a chambermaid to a guard. This is a chambermaid who took Alicent's necklace in episode 5 as payment to try to sneak Alicent and Helaena out with her maid clothes. Mysaria calls her a thief and a liar and orders her to be killed because this poor maid knows about Helena's pregnancy, and she's telling the guard, hey, whatever she says about the pregnancy or why she has this necklace, whether it was a gift or whether she took it, don't believe her, kill her. In the murder crime scene, the gold cloaks resign to Daemon, not wanting to leave their penniless kids fatherless too. With the gold cloak removed and placed on the table, Daemon gets another idea similar to the way the scene with Rhaenyra ended with take off your belt. It's time to masquerade! From not actually dead Tullys in the opening scene to not actually Baratheons in the later scene. There's just a lot of disguise wearing in this episode. Lord Corlys spends his time doing things the hand of the queen should not be worrying with, ornamenting trees in the crownlands with Triarchy baubles. Damn, the sea snake really hates these pirates. Killing them is all he really knows how to do. He relays to his son Alan that he heard Tyland Lannister survived and is in Rook's Rest, which is critical exposition for these characters to have, because now Rhaenyra's faction will know that the guy with all the secrets to all the relocated hidden crown gold is still alive. Tyland and Larys bury the body of Janos. I love how Larys just kind of nudges the corpse in the shallow grave with his club foot. Larys has found a merchant ship leaving mating pool to Bravos. Tyland still wants to go home to Casterly Rock, and Aegon, testing Tyland, asks if he thinks he's a terrible man. And Tyland gives a real cousin Greg kind of answer here.
There is, in any one of us, a venture, much to admire and much to be deplored.
Yes, if it is to be said. So it is.
And I love the little glance downward in shame and the sigh from Jefferson Hall, knowing that he just gave an idiotic answer because Larys was not afraid to speak plainly to Aegon about him being a terrible person. So Aegon decides that they set sail for Essos in a few days. And I love this character development for Aegon. He's showing how he has grown as a human being. He no longer is interested in flattery. He just wants honesty from his subjects. The way Larys counseled Aegon to embrace anonymity, now Alice Rivers counsels the brother Aemond to let people think he's gone. A frog sleeping under the ice, she said. I love the shots of Aemond in this scene, framed within the viney window grate, surrounded by the dripping of the room. It really does feel like he's in the maw of this castle being devoured with no real hope of escape. Alice tells Aemond to continue letting people think he's where Vhagar is, and that Vhagar might have flown away as a way of protecting her rider. And I love this transition.
You'll fall alone. Until what end?
This guy certainly fell alone. Lady Jeyne Arryn executed someone through the moon door of the Eyrie, and she quips,
Never ceases to be fascinating.
Notice here that Lady Jeyne's throne is carved out of weirwood. In A Storm of Swords, George R. R. Martin wrote about Lady Lysa Arryn's garden in the Eyrie, writing, "The builders had intended it as a god's wood, but the Eyrie rested on the hard stone of the mountain, and no matter how much soil was hauled up from the vale, they could not get a weirwood to take root here." So despite the Eyrie's throne being carved out of that wood, no natural weirwood tree could take root here. Interesting historical context, the Eyrie was built by the Andals, the invaders of Westeros who slaughtered the children of the forest. So it's believed that the children of the forest might have cursed the Vale. Rhaena had seen her sister Baela's dragon Moondancer flying past the Vale with sea smoke, so she headed towards Iron Oaks where she was spotted. So I guess the guy pushed through the moon door was probably some poor soul who identified her. So from this guy to the chambermaid in King's Landing to the stable boy at Harrenhal, a lot of innocents are being killed this episode for just seeing or knowing sensitive information. Then this scene with Baela and Alan, I was trying to figure out where it even is because Rhaena said her sister was flying toward Iron Oaks, but from the background dragon sounds, I'm pretty sure this is part of the dragon pit in King's Landing after Alan had returned from meeting with Corlys. Baela admires how Alan has taken responsibility as the oldest brother, something she probably also admired in Jace. Somehow Gwayne is already in Tumbleton. Orwell said earlier that it would take the river host a fortnight to get there. From the same general area Gwayne just was, Gwayne was on foot with no horse and barely one night's head start with leeches on his knees. Yet he somehow made it there pronto. I guess if you want to go fast, you go alone. Ormond keeps his scented dish under his nose as his stinky cousin stands before him. Incense also burns between the two of them. Ormond says,
"I would take one Hightower sword over 3 of Tully's mudmen."
Yes, they are obsessed with river mud, but Ormond just considers anything dirty or grimy to be disgusting and lower. But also, we just saw that matchup at the Butcher's Ball, and those Hightower swords did not live up to that ratio. Gwayne retires to his quarters, and Ormond tells Darren,
Make sure he bathes.
Oh, and mind yourself. Back's against the wall.
Huh, so is this just an asshole calling his cousin gay in a sophomoric way? Yeah, I think we have to go back to past episodes to look for hints of Gwayne's sexual orientation. The actor Freddie is bisexual. Maybe there was something there in the way he responded to one of their men assaulting a woman, or maybe the way he invited Sir Criston to serve House Hightower was seen by Sir Criston as a kind of come on, the way Rhaenyra and Alicent invited Criston to serve them when that ended up turning into something more. Either way, I think the takeaway here is that Ormond is just a total prick, but the way Darren responds, both in his look to Ormond and in his judgment of Ormond in the hushed chat with Gwayne afterwards, makes me think that both of these Hightower younger brothers might be queer, and they just feel seen and supported by each other and disgusted with the savage mindset of the older ranking men of their house. Helaena embroiders and does so in a violent, stabby way with the needle. In particular, she's stitching the part that has Alice Rivers in the embroidery. She calls out her mother Alicent for lying about having Princess Jaehaera meeting them someplace ahead on their escape route, and now she pokes her own fingers with the needle, evoking her mother's nervous tick of picking at her fingers. Remember, in season 1 episode 9, Helaena embroidered a spider, which was her way of trying to make sense of the puzzle of her dragon dreams, and it was a reflection of her earlier line in season 1 episode 7 as she fiddled with the spider on Driftmark.
And turns lean, spool of green, spool of black, dragons of flesh, weaving dragons of thread.
That line and the spider turning the loom of spools of green and black foreshadowed the Targaryen civil war that they were on the precipice of. And we just saw another spider in season 3 episode 5 as Sir Criston walked into the Tully's trap, foreshadowing his fateful death in this war. And since that first season, the opening credits of season 2 and season 3 have really focused on these cryptic family tapestries that seem to be prophetic of future events at times. So at this point, I'm just gonna go with the theory that these opening credits tapestries are Helena's work, or maybe her daughter Jaehaera after her. Like a mom in a horror movie seeing her kids' creepy drawings, Alicent sees that this embroidery Helaena was constructing depicts Harrenhal surrounded by blue and red leaf trees as Alice Rivers tends to Aemond, Aemond's sapphire eye visible, a bloody cut on his side as he lays naked in this diamond-shaped pool of blood. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I will say that this shape is certainly vaginal. Helaena knows that Aemond is at Harrenhal from her visions. I think she's also aware of the actions of the Woods Witch Alice Rivers and the way Alice described Harrenhal in episode 5 as an ancient living structure that breathes and drinks. And if that castle can do those things, why not also gestate an offspring that will be reborn from it? Now, I would say that the red leaf trees in this embroidery are weirwoods, but what the hell are these blue leaf trees? Does Helaena think that the blue just looks pretty? I'll talk about this embroidery more in the spoiler dungeon. Thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. When the weather is hot, everybody has a shorter fuse than normal. Being patient is hard when your shirt's stuck to your back with sweat, or when you can't sleep because of the heat. Frequently in the mornings, I'm trying to grab an iced coffee on the way into the office, and it feels like the days I'm in the biggest rush are also the days when everybody is in line in front of me and they have 1,000 questions about what should be a straightforward coffee order. I know it's got nothing to do with me, but that doesn't stop little frustrations like that from building up. My therapist has done a great job of reminding me that finding a healthy outlet for that frustration, whether that's a video game or going to the gym or whatever works for you, is more productive than just trying to ignore how you're feeling. Small, useful insights like that are so helpful in navigating whatever life throws at you, and BetterHelp can help connect you with a therapist who's trained to help guide you to the insights you need. BetterHelp makes starting therapy easy. You take a short quiz, then get matched with a licensed therapist quickly. You can communicate however you feel comfortable, phone, video, or text. If your therapist isn't a good fit for you, you can switch at any time with no additional cost. That said, 82% of BetterHelp clients recommend their therapist. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/newrockstars to get 10% off your first month of therapy, because no one should have to go through anything alone. BetterHelp is here with you. At Harrenhal, this poor stable boy lays eyes on Aemond. Remember, this is one of the 2 Harrenhal workers that Alice mentioned in episode 5 still working there, along with the blind butter churner. So since this kid's eyes work, Alice kills him. I'm guessing she'll keep the blind butter churner alive since he can't see Aemond walking around. But notice how Alice seems to appear from out of nowhere. In the previous shot, there was no one behind the stable boy in the doorway, but as Aemond walks closer and the guy turns, she's suddenly right there. Yeah, this witch can teleport. Alice says that her game is Aemond's to learn if his spirit is willing. As she hauls out this chest, notice that Aegon the Conqueror's dagger sticks out from Aemond's belt to make it super obvious in the shot and somewhat phallic. I mean, Alice's objective in the scene is to seduce Aemond with the promise of a future bloodline, his own kind of song of ice and fire sense of destiny and duty. But then she opens the chest to reveal a clutch of 5 dragon eggs. Whoa! She and Aemond recall this family history.
Dreamfire.
Your ancestor, Rhaena Targaryen, came to Harrenhal after the death of her daughter.
Alice Rivers says that Rhaena grieved and grew old here, and before she died, her dragon Dreamfire laid a clutch of eggs that have stayed here cold and abandoned these 100 years. So here's a brief summary of the history Alice and Aemond are talking about. Dreamfire is currently Helena's dragon, a blue dragon. But before that, the dragon was bonded to Rhaena Targaryen, not the Rhaena Targaryen of this generation, this Rhaena's namesake, the elder Rhaena. She was the first grandchild of Aegon the Conqueror, the daughter of the second king of this dynasty, Aenys. When Aenys died, her uncle Maegor the Cruel usurped the throne, and Rhaena had to live much of her life in exile on Fair Isle while worrying about her twin daughters Arrya and Rhaella. So the daughter that Alice refers to here is Arrya, who rode Balerion the Black Dread after Maegor died, and she was the rider before Viserys I from this show. Arrya and Balerion went missing for years, and then one day Arrya came back to King's Landing infected with a disease that killed her the same day. By the time her mother Rhaena got that news, the daughter was cremated. At this point, Jaehaerys I was king, and he wanted the ashes to be interred at Dragonstone, but Rhaena took the ashes into the sky on Dreamfire and released them into the wind, claiming that her daughter Arrya had wanted to fly. So this historical time period during the reign of Jaehaerys I is why I think we got that little moment with Vermithor and Silverwing outside of Tumbleton, and why we see that silver and bronze dragon in the opening tapestry art of every episode. But after Arrya's death, Alice Rivers says here, the mother Rhaena went into isolation at Harrenhal, where Dreamfire remained until the princess's death 17 years later in 73 AC. So when Alice says these 100 years, it's only actually been 60 to 77 years that these eggs have actually been here. This older generation Rhaena is just another fascinating figure that's part of the female side of the family history that this show is exploring, with Rhaenyra, with Rhaenys, the queen who never was, with the new destinies being charted out for Baela and Rhaena of the younger generation, with Helaena and her daughter Jaehaera. The show wants to show how Fire and Blood didn't fully capture the character or the spirit of these women, and what secrets they kept from characters like Septon Eustace and Mushroom. That there are a lot of fascinating women women with great empathy who could have done a better job ruling than the men in their family. And I love how the show is exploring how their secrets died with them and just were not reflected in the text of Fire and Blood. Because this reveal of Dreamfire laying 5 eggs at Harrenhal is a completely new reveal. It's specific to this HBO series. It's not mentioned in Fire and Blood. However, Dreamfire does lay clutches of eggs in several other places in Fire and Blood, and it's actually believed that the 3 of them that went to Pentos were the eggs that ended up with Daenerys in Game of Thrones. Dreamfire currently resides at the King's Landing Dragon Pit. Remember, season 1 episode 6 showed Aemond trying to bond with this dragon, and Dreamfire just blew fire and threatened the kid away. But the fact that Dreamfire is Helena's dragon and that Dreamfire's eggs are here in Harrenhal tells us that Helaena, as a dragon dreamer, must have some cosmic connection to these eggs that give her visions of Aemond at Harrenhal. It probably also resulted in the part of Daemon's vision at Harrenhal in season 2 episode 8 that was described again in episode 2 of this season that showed Daenerys with her 3 dragons, because those were also Dreamfire's eggs. The dragon's name is Dreamfire, the fire that equally burns the minds of all Targaryens, linked through their dreams of people like Daenerys, Aegon, and now Helaena. And the fact that there are 5 eggs is some very attractive math for Aemond. Alicent earlier asked how he hoped to best Rhaenyra's 6 dragons with his 1 dragon, and bam, here are 5 more dragon eggs to even that score. I'm guessing they're gonna want 5 kids to claim each of these eggs. As Alicent appeals to Aemond to hook up, this egg that Alicent had called cold is now felt by Aemond to be warm. Alicent says,
I've long envisaged the return of the Targaryens to this ancient seat.
In Alicent's mind, Harrenhal isn't a place of ruin brought about by Balerion the Black Dread. It's fertile ground with hope of rebirth from an aging woman mourning her daughter, a place where female Targaryens can rule outside the patriarchal structures of Westeros. While she says she wants to give Aemond sons, I think she's hoping that they're daughters. Aemond believes he's cursed, and Alicent replies,
Do you imagine that you alone know what it is to be cursed?
I mean, yeah, if these eggs have really been here for between 60 to 77 years, for Alicent to know about this secret history, she would have to be at least that old. I do think Alicent can die if she gets injured, like she was truly fearful of those Ironborn in episode 5, but I think she doesn't age naturally. So here's a theory I'll throw at you that isn't spoiling anything because Alicent Rivers isn't given this context in any text. I think Alicent Rivers is an unaging woods witch who looked after an aging Rhaena Targaryen from 56 AC to 73 AC. Maybe when Aegon the Conqueror arrived to cook Harren the Black, Harren prayed to the old gods and sacrificed this chambermaid. Or as an Ironborn, maybe Harren the Black prayed to the drowned god and tried to drown one of his salt wives. And the children of the forest and the green men took pity on this woman and enchanted her with agelessness. That could also be seen as a curse by her, and why she feels that the gods have turned their backs on her. That attempted drowning could be why she now calls herself this.
I will be the Lady of the Water, and you, the Dragon Lord, by my side.
We could also interpret Lady of the Water as a nod to the Lady of the Lake from Arthurian legend. The water being referred to here would, after all, be the God's Eye Lake. The Lady of the Lake was a fairy or enchantress known for providing Arthur with the sword Excalibur, also for eliminating Merlin, for raising the Knight Lancelot after the death of his father, and for helping take the dying Arthur to the magical island of Avalon after his final battle. There's certainly a lot of parallels here to Alicent Rivers, someone connected to an enchanted island of the Isle of Faces in the middle of that lake. But does this series want us to see Aemond as a King Arthur figure, as a Lancelot figure, or is he just a lost prince who gets enchanted and seduced in a similar way? Alicent promises to give Aemond sons, Targaryen princes, to claim these dragon eggs, and over a kiss we hear a fitting sound effect. Yes, the sound of a baby crying. We saw what you did there. Again, more on this in the spoiler dungeon. Rhaenyra sits the Iron Throne to hear petitions. One man complains about the tallow shortage. Remember in episode 3, a page mentioned to Rhaenyra how rats chewed through the candle tallow, so now it sounds like the crown took tallow from the common folk. Rhaenyra tries to throw Master of Coin Torrhen Manderly under the bus for this. A septa from the Mother House complains how without gold cloaks, one young septa was taken. Rhaenyra's response?
You have my condolences. I shall light a candle for her when next I attend the sept.
Yep, thoughts and prayers. Also, Rhaenyra hardly ever attends the sept. Also, how can he light a candle when the tallow is running low? And I love how later, if you listen closely, you can hear the septa shouting this.
He was 6 and 10.
Yeah, 6 and 10, 16. Interestingly, that's around the age Mushroom claims Rhaenyra was when Daemon took her through the brothels. Then this Godric, the Mason, complains about general city safety after Goldcloak's resignations and doesn't buy it when Rhaenyra blames this on Ormond Hightower's attacks. And then this happens. A cut on the pinky finger from the Swords of the Iron Throne. On the same pinky finger that cut her father Viserys in the pilot episode of the series. Being cut by the Iron Throne is seen as an omen that the throne is rejecting you, that you're not fit to rule it, that your time on it will be short. In Fire and Blood, observers claimed Rhaenyra was cut from sitting on it on her first day. Here, the HBO series delayed it as more of an effect of the pressures of ruling. Rhaenyra looks up to the statue of her late father Viserys I, a statue that holds his silly little model Valyria set. Rhaenyra stands from the Iron Throne, which I think is her first ever overhead shot from the throne, and its nest of swords surrounding it. It's like the gods and all of her predecessors are looking down on her in judgment in this moment. Daemon cosplays as a Gold's Cloak to lure in this serial killer attacker, old Heterochromia.
We have no number. We are everywhere.
Okay, Anonymous. He calls Darren the Daring, which is an interesting moniker that does come from Fire and Blood, but Darren on this HBO series so far has not done anything to really earn that moniker. Daemon kills King's Landing's Jack the Ripper and bumps into Ulf.
Which way your fucking... Your prince. Your grace.
Yeah, your prince would never be something you say in royal decorum. Ulf says that he needs to be able to take the air and grab a drink.
Men deserve their simple pleasures. You yourself should understand.
Ulf is hinting that he witnessed or heard about Daemon's time in the Strait of Silk, specifically perhaps Daemon's impotence with some of these sex workers. The little girl who reported to old Heterochromia in episode 5 sees Daemon humiliate Ulf, so indeed, Ormond's spy network likely will continue from this girl, and Ormond's gonna learn about this discontent among the Dragon Seeds. Hugh hijacks a carriage into Tumbleton and follows the group of Rhaenyra's assassins in the Baratheon clothes. Ormond lectures to Darren and Gwayne that you can never trust one who's clawed his way to power.
His ambition is oft fueled by some lack, some shame or lust or rage.
Ormond is really setting us up to worry about Hugh and Ulf's sudden rise to power and how that godly power is overwhelming to a common man. Ormond compliments Rhaenyra on choosing Corlys Velaryon as her hand.
There is a soundness to his breeding, not the sordid appetite of the striver.
Yeah, it seems that Ormond greatly admires a Valyrian-blooded figure who doesn't mount dragons, but made his fame with victories at sea. The Baratheon-dressed assassins enter, and Ormond is so dulled by the foul smell of their boots and clothes that he really misses the plot with them.
You are quite welcome, Sir
Arryn Baratheon, cousin to Lord Boros.
Notice on this, Gwayne's head shoots up in the background. Gwayne steps forward and John Roxton clocks that and steps in between these men and Prince Darren. And as these men make like they're gonna bend the knee to Darren, Gwayne grabs a cutting knife and slashes their throats, brutally killing them all with Roxton's help. Gwayne says that Sir Arryn Baratheon has hair of light chestnut, is a foot taller and quite comely. There's no Arryn Baratheon at all in Fire and Blood, so I'm guessing Gwayne met the real Arryn at a tourney, maybe even the same tourney where he was unhorsed by Sir Criston Cole, the tourney in the first episode of the series. On top of these assassins stinking up the place, the gross gore of their deaths just leads delicate flower Ormond puking up his dinner. Talk about a sordid appetite. And speaking of stink on people's clothes, Hugh's wife Kat is particularly turned off by the stink on his clothes from dragon. What is the smell of dragon, kids? It's the smell of smoke, of fire. Remember in season 2, Kat and Hugh were grieving the death of their daughter from an illness. Hugh wanted to move on from that grief immediately, whereas Kat really needed her husband to just live in that grief with her for longer. She also implies that many things happened to her as a woman walking the road to Tumbleton alone. That reframes everything that Hightower soldier did when he invaded their home in a past episode as something re-triggering some trauma. So by losing Kat, now both Hugh and Ulf have lost the one thing keeping them going. Alicent tries to arrange for Helena's relocation out of King's Landing with the intel that she got from the embroidery that Aemond is at Harrenhal, but he's without Vhagar. And she confesses that Helaena experiences nightmares and puzzles and sees things that end up coming to pass. Rhaenyra is intrigued.
She dreams. She's a dreamer, like Daenerys who foresaw the doom.
So much subtext from Rhaenyra here. The idea of a dreamer existing now in the current generation of Targaryens reassures this queen that her father's testimony of Aegon's dream, the Song of Ice and Fire, was real. And now she sees a new value in keeping Helaena here in the Red Keep as someone who could help her predict the future. I'm sure Rhaenyra is going to very much misinterpret whatever puzzles Helaena drops. Rhaenyra proposes to send Alicent to Harrenhal with one assassin. Alicent grabs her wrist, the same hand where Rhaenyra's pinky was cut from the swords on the throne. And for a second, it looks like she's worried Alicent will notice that unworthiness. Helaena asks if truly no lord asked for her hand, if it was Alicent's decision to marry her to her brother Aegon. Alicent says it was Otto, but she didn't stop it from happening as she wanted to keep her precious bug girl here with her. Helaena has refused to eat, but now some light goes on here.
I cannot go unless I know you are sustained.
Helaena now accepts the food, but I worry she just did this to get her mother to leave so that she could do something even more harmful to herself in Alicent's absence. Alicent heads to Harrenhal to parley with Aemond. This does not happen in Fire and Blood. Alicent never leaves King's Landing during this period, but also in Fire and Blood, Aemond at this time is really taking Vhagar to torch town after town in the Riverlands, so we're truly in uncharted waters here on the HBO show. We see how Rhaenyra went another full episode without talking to her son and heir Joffrey, just finding the boy after he already fell asleep. Orwell gives Rhaenyra one of the returned Baratheon doublets, and with the phrase, "Kick this dog and it will bite your hand." Hand? No, not hand! And we cut to Hand Corlys celebrating with his Velaryon men. Notice what they're singing between Corlys's lines here.
And relentless. We have cut through our enemy.
Bear in the Maiden Fair, the traditional folk song sung by everyone throughout Westeros that we saw throughout the Game of Thrones series. Among the hanging corpses of the Triarchy, Corlys gets surprised by Jon Roxton, who chains up Corlys. You may wonder, how did Jon Roxton get out of Tumbleton and get over here undetected? Well, Hugh was supposed to be keeping watch and instead snuck into the city to talk to his wife, so I suppose Roxton just got lucky that Vermithor up on the hill wasn't attended. There's no way Roxton would have known that Hugh snuck in, but also I have no idea how Ormond or Roxton could know that Corlys was here in this part of the Crownlands fighting off the Triarchy, considering it looks like Corlys didn't leave any witnesses. I mean, sure, due to their pigeon messages from King's Landing, they would at least know that Corlys had left the city, but camped out right here in particular, being able to catch him with this much of his guard down? Okay, Corlys does not visibly die here. He just looks like he's being chained up for capture to be sent back to Tumbleton as a hostage. This does not happen to Corlys at all in Fire and Blood. I have no idea what they're going to do with him in the show, but Ormond clearly wants Rhaenyra to know that they have Corlys if they sent this weird taunting message to Rhaenyra mentioning hands. All right, let's end in the spoiler dungeon. Stop watching if you don't want to know anything about future events. Also, you can stop watching if you don't want me to spoil the future of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, because I'm going to touch on that history too. Let's start with Helena's embroidery. Is this actually showing Alice Rivers making Aemond a kind of blood sacrifice like the blood mages of ancient Valyria that we see in the opening Tapestry art, so that Alice can get her own children without Aemond around anymore and have 5 daughters, dragon riders of her control? Let's also talk about these 5 eggs. I mean, this is a dumb theory, but could they be illusions by Alice Rivers? She is a witch. She can make Aemond hallucinate things to manipulate him. For now, I'm gonna assume that these 5 eggs are real because it's more fun that way. I have a feeling that these 5 eggs are going to be 5 of the 7 eggs that King Aegon V, our future egg from A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, starts the fire at Summerhall with as he tries to hatch them. Where would the other 2 come from? I don't know. It kind of sounds like Dreamfire and Silverwing laid eggs everywhere. Like there's believed to be another egg laid by Silverwing at Winterfell, and we know Duncan Egg will visit Winterfell in their future. Maybe one of the other eggs from the 4 at the Vale that we saw in season 2 got away from them. Or maybe another egg makes it out of the dragon pit when it gets stormed in season 4. And lastly, Helaena seems to be on a worrying path of self-harm. The poking of her own fingers, the eating food just to temporarily appease her mother to get her to leave. Yeah, I'm not too thrilled about where she seems to be headed. Comment down below with your thoughts on this episode, and special thanks to one of our In Our Underground subscribers, Jeremy Dunham, for supporting us at the executive producer level. You can get all of our exclusive bonus content by clicking the link in the description below or going to nrunderground.supercast.com. Big thanks to Studio Tech Brian Kim, New Rockstars editors Joshua Stephen Hurd and Abby Friel, and all of our supporting editors for their work on this video. Follow me at EA Voss, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.